What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Wool Combo. I know it's been a few weeks since my last video, so I want to thank you guys for all of your patience. It's December 21st. You know what that means. Not only is it the first day of winter, but there's only 10 days left in 2018. I think there's no better time than now to look back on the year, talk about my top 10 metal hardcore albums of 2018. So without any further delay, let's jump right into the list. Alright guys, so number 10 on my list is going to be Black Flame, the newest album by Bury Tomorrow. This album really didn't have a ton of promotion behind it, so it kind of hit me by surprise, but when I took the time to listen to it, I was really impressed with the dynamics on the album, the straightforward metalcore aspects, and I think most noticeably the really catchy choruses. I think Jason Cameron does a really good job of bringing these choruses up to another notch on this album. They're very catchy. They're very straightforward metalcore, but sometimes there's nothing wrong with just listening to straightforward metalcore. Sometimes it's nice to really just listen to an easy listening style metalcore band. So number 10 on my list is going to be Black Flame, the newest album by Bury Tomorrow. Number 9 is going to be a little bit of a different direction here. Number 9 is going to be Bad Wolves' newest album, Disobey. Now, a lot of you people are probably saying, really, Bad Wolves, that song Zombie is pretty ridiculous and I hate it and I never want to hear it again. Yeah, me neither. But, you know, that's not really them. That's not really their style. Zombie was released, I think, just because of the popularity of the song. If you took the time to listen to the rest of Bad Wolves' newest album, Disobey, you'd really see that there's a shit ton of diversity on here. We're talking ballads, deathcore style songs, metalcore style songs, new metal style songs, probably a little bit of southern rock in there, everything in between. So if you're a fan of diversity, you're a fan of a band that likes to put a lot of different styles of metal and music on display, I definitely recommend listening to Bad Wolves' newest album, Disobey. You won't be disappointed. There's a lot of diversity on there, and you'll definitely be able to come away from it at least with one or two favorite songs off the album. So number 9 is going to be Disobey, the newest album by Bad Wolves. Number 8 is going to be Blessthefall's newest album, Hard Feelings. This is a bit of a transition album for Blessthefall. They kind of did away with a lot of the heavier aspects and incorporated a lot more of the clean singing. That doesn't mean the heavy aspects are gone, but they're there in smaller doses. I thought they did a really good job on this album. It definitely still is a Blessthefall album, but those heavier, punchier moments come in at more poignant times, and they are a little bit more meaningful in the music now. Rather than just going from the cliche breakdown to singing chorus to breakdown, they kind of break it up a little bit more, incorporate a lot more of the clean singings, a little bit more of those unique melodies to kind of change up the style of the album. And while some people that are a fan of Blessthefall's heavier stuff might not like this album, it might have been a little bit of a miss for them, I did think that the diversity was enough to really make it to this list. So number 8 is going to be Blessthefall's Hard Feelings. Number 7 is Neon, the latest album by Erra. So this album was one of those albums that was met with a little bit of mixed reception. Erra's been one of those bands that have been kind of on the forefront of the technical metalcore sound for the last few years. Their first few albums were bangers, they were absolute classics, and really turned people onto them really quickly, which is how they ended up getting signed to Sumerian Records so quickly. That being said, this album does have a little bit more diversity than their previous stuff. They kind of step out into some more experimental style music. Now, it definitely still has those really catchy, bouncy riffs and some heavier side to it, but there is a little bit more experimentation here, and I did see some reception from some hardcore fans of Erra. Some people that really thought it was a little bit weaker than some of their previous stuff. My personal opinion, I'm right in the middle. I think it is weaker than some of their previous stuff, but I don't think it's so weak that it doesn't hold its own. Even though there are some points in the album where it feels like they took a step backward, overall I felt like the album was very solid, and that's why it made it to my list at number 7. Alright, so number 6 is going to be Eternal Nightmare, the newest album by Chelsea Grin. So Chelsea Grin went through a few member changes over the last few years, most notably their vocalist change. With Alex stepping away and the vocalist from Lorna Shore stepping in, a lot of people were really curious to hear what exactly was going to happen with Chelsea Grin, and I think it was kind of refreshing to hear that they aren't going to change their style too much. Granted, it feels like it's more of a discovery album in terms of they're trying to discover their new sound with a new combination of members. It does still have some really high points. See You Soon is probably one of the most brutal songs I've heard this year, and I'm a huge fan of that song. That song alone makes the album worth listening to, but there are a few other highlight moments on it. So if you're a fan of Chelsea Grin, if you've been a fan of Lorna Shore, if you really want to hear where that transition in sound is going, I definitely recommend listening to Eternal Nightmare, the newest album by Chelsea Grin. Made it to number 6. It's a solid album. They killed it at Warped Tour this year, and I would expect big things from them here in the next few years. Alright guys, so number 5 is going to be Silent Planet's When the End Began. Now, Silent Planet's one of those bands I really haven't given too much attention to previously. This was the first full album I listened to by them. I had listened to some stuff previously, and I had seen them at Warped Tour a couple years ago, so I had some familiarity with them. But this was the first time I'd given them my full attention, and I was a really big fan of this album. I thought that the topics that they were touching on were extremely important. They touch on a lot of real-world topics, things that we're facing right now, and in very poetic and very well-written ways. Their vocalist is extremely talented, and his writing style is pretty much second to none. If you're a fan of really complex metal with deep meanings, really creative sections, and a little bit of experimentation, I would definitely recommend checking out When the End Began by Silent Planet. It's got a lot of that in there, really fresh, really unique style sound, while really preserving that extremely technical metal hardcore style sound that they've been known for. So number 5 on my list is When the End Began by Silent Planet. Number 4 on my top 10 albums of 2018 is Extinctions, the newest album by UNEARTH. So UNEARTH are one of these guys that have been around for like 2 decades now, and somehow they're still pumping out sick albums. UNEARTH kind of pioneered the metalcore scene. They kind of were one of those first bands that came out of the New England hardcore realm with All That Remains, Shadows Fall, Killswitch Engage, that whole group of people. So it's really cool to see them still around making music. Now, they never quite punched through to the upper echelon of metal success, but they've always stayed tried and true to their sound, and Extinctions is no different. It's a really gritty, hardcore, metalcore album. A lot of really, really gritty riffs, really slamming breakdowns. This really sounds like they're harkening back to some of the earlier UNEARTH material, and I think they really nailed it on this album. If you haven't listened to Extinctions, the newest album by UNEARTH, I really, really recommend it, if only for the nostalgia. This album was a great album to show that they still have what it takes to be at the top of the metalcore genre. Even if they never quite hit that upper echelon of success, they're always going to be heavyweights in the genre, and I definitely think they deserve a spot on this list. So number 4 is going to be Extinctions by UNEARTH. Alright guys, so we're getting into the top 3 now. We're getting down to the albums that I enjoyed the most of 2018. So these are probably going to be mixed genres a little bit. I tried not to do 3 albums that were exactly the same. I tried to list my 3 albums really that I've enjoyed listening to the most, regardless what kind of genre they are. As long as they fit into the metal genre, they're here. So number 3 is actually going to be Holy Hell, the latest album by Architects. So obviously this probably isn't a surprise to a lot of Architects fans or metalcore fans in general. Architects are one of those bands that came blazing onto the scene. Their last album, All Our Gods Have Abandoned Us, was a classic. After the death of their guitarist, they pretty much went on to have a ton of success. A lot of people follow their music really closely, and their popularity in the UK is unparalleled right now. I'm actually excited I get to see them at a fest next year in May of 2019 down in Carolina, so really excited to see Architects. If you're a fan of Architects, if you're a fan of the experimental, driving metal hardcore sound that they have, Holy Hell is just, it's just amazing. There's no letdown here. This album is exactly what you would have expected from Architects following up All Our Gods Have Abandoned Us. It's heavy, it's emotional, it's soft, it's got a lot of beautiful moments to it, and I would just definitely recommend listening to it. Architects are one of those bands that I didn't really get into at first, probably because I had just so many bands I was listening to, but a few of my friends, specifically my buddy Scott, has kind of showed me Architects, kind of turned me on to them, and this latest album really just kind of brought me fully on board with them. So Holy Hell was one of those albums that kind of had a ton of stuff going on. Takes a few listens to really appreciate it, but if you can get a chance to listen to it, I highly recommend it. It's one of the top albums of this year. So number 3 on my list is Holy Hell by Architects. Alright guys, number 2 on my list is going to be a little bit of a change in genre. We're still inside the metal realm, but not quite so much of the hardcore realm. Number 2 on my list is going to be EMBER, the latest album by Breaking Benjamin. Breaking Benjamin are one of those bands that have been around for about 15 years now, and over that time frame, they've basically just released solid album after solid album. These guys aren't the heaviest in terms of brutality. You're not going to hear a ton of breakdowns or anything like that from them, but they are definitely a metal band. They definitely have really creative riffs, and they definitely have amazing songwriting. And I feel like EMBER was just such a high quality album. If you have not listened to EMBER by Breaking Benjamin and you are in the slightest bit a Breaking Benjamin fan or a fan of metal and well-written rock songs, I highly recommend you listen to this album. It is just absolutely stacked with super, super memorable songs, super creative songs. There's a lot of versatility in the songs. There's a lot of different vibes going on. I think that's one thing that has always set Breaking Benjamin apart from some other bands, is just their ability to write so many catchy, creative, unique songs that literally flow together but retain their own uniqueness and make so much sense on an album together that it's almost like some sort of audible story that you're listening to. And I think in a lot of ways, Breaking Benjamin actually did that on this album. There's a few songs that the music videos for are all tied together to kind of tell a story. So they actually really did tell a story on this album more so than previously. And I think this album just has some sort of special feeling to it. If you know the things that Breaking Benjamin have gone through over the last few years, and you know the changes and the health things that Ben's gone through, to hear Ember come out is really just a breath of fresh air. To know that Breaking Benjamin's still at the top of their game, still able to write these songs is just so awesome. Some of the highlights from it are Feed the Wolf, Tourniquet, Torn in Two, Red Cold River, and Blood, just to name a few, but pretty much the entire album is an instant classic. So number 2 on my list this year is Breaking Benjamin's Ember. Now, this number 1 album, I was a little surprised I put it at number 1 because, being honest, Breaking Benjamin's probably one of my favorite bands of all time. So for me to put anything above Breaking Benjamin is a little crazy. But I have found myself listening to this album so much this year since it's come out a couple months ago. I've just been in love with it and I just haven't been able to put it down. So my number 1 album of 2018 is going to be The Silver Scream by Ice Nine Kills. So I'm going to give you a couple reasons why this is my number 1 album. Obviously, number 1 being the catchiness. This album is so catchy at a lyrical level that these songs will be stuck in your head for weeks. Really, just for weeks. I mean, I find myself humming these while I'm vacuuming my damn house. That's how stupid catchy this album is. You know, that's the first part of it. And number 2 is just the creativity level. The album's a themed album, and it's based on the concept of horror movies. So every song on the album is based on a different horror movie. That's amazing. That is so cool. And when you listen to these songs, they sound like soundtracks to these horror movies. They've literally created an extension of these horror movies, a new piece of lore that you can enjoy to tie in everything you've ever enjoyed about these movies or about these stories or franchises. So I feel like they did something really special and very rare on this album where they were able to capture something so unique. It's almost like lightning in a bottle. Every once in a while bands capture lightning in a bottle and they have one of those albums that just goes on to be incredibly popular. I mean, you can think back to like Bullet for My Valentine's, The Poison, or The Discovery by Born of Osiris. Albums that at the time were, oh, you know, that's them being them, but then when you go back and look at it, you're like, holy shit, that was monumentally amazing, and even no one's been able to touch it since. So I think this is one of those albums. I think this is one of those albums that's going to stand the test of time for a while. And it's going to go on to have a lot of popularity, maybe in the cult classic realms, maybe just, you know, societal-wise. Musically-wise, it's definitely very popular right now, and I feel like it had a really positive reception. But overall, I just could not put this album at number 1 on my list, guys. I really feel like Ice Nine Kills knocked it out of the park with this album. If you can listen to this album and not find something you enjoy, then you probably shouldn't be listening to music, because this album is just incredibly full of unique, creative songs, all telling a different story about a different movie in a different way. It's not like 10 songs that all sound the same. You know, these songs all sound unique. All of the lyrics are so incredibly written, incorporating lines from the movie, scenes from the movies, to really create this new storyline that you can follow. So, guys, I'm going to absolutely recommend you check out Ice Nine Kills' latest album, Silver Scream. I'm going to recommend you guys check out all the albums on this list. These are my favorite albums of 2018. I know you guys are going to have different lists. Like I said, I want to see your list down below. Tell me what your guys' favorite albums were. What were your top 10 albums? I'm really looking for some new albums to listen to. I know I didn't listen to all of the albums in 2018. There's a shit ton of bands out there, and I don't have all the time to do it. So I'm kind of depending on you guys to post that list down below so I can check out some of those bands that I didn't list here, that I didn't get to listen to, and see if maybe they'll end up being some of my favorite bands down the road. I really enjoy that. So make sure to post your top 10 list down below in the comments and let me know what that is. If you liked this video, guys, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. It might make me sad, but it's whatever. You guys probably don't care. Either way, if you like this content, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell to get notified. I try to come at you guys with a new video every week. I know there was a little gap in the past, but usually we're pretty consistent here. So make sure to stick around if you like what you see. Say hey, say what's up. I want to thank you guys for checking out this video as always. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend, a great Christmas, and until next time, we will see you soon.